Okay, so here we are in the fresh scene with a new cube. Okay, if you don't see these lines here, just check here under display options, these garage shading lines, or press this shortcut NB. Okay, for those of you that are asking, this grid is just a visual aid that will later help you in the modeling process, or this just to let you know where the plane lies. Okay, so first we will meet these few basic tools that are really the backbone of polygon modeling. So instead of watching me model something, I would rather for you to know the tools, what they are really doing, how they really operate, and how to utilize them to serve you much better. So firstly we will meet the basic tools, then we will meet some more complex tools, and then actually later in these lessons I will show you how to utilize these tools to model something. This will be just a technical representation of what each tool does. So now, as you can see here, if we select our cube in the attribute manager, it is still a parametric object, so we can convert it by going here or pressing C on a keyboard, because I think these settings and then this number of segments will be quite enough for what we are going to show now. Okay, so press C, done. The first and most commonly used tool in the polygon modeling is the extrude tool. So we'll go to our face mode. Let's say we can select one of these faces, let's say this one. So where are the modeling tools exactly? Smart people who made Cinema 4D thought, well, if you're modeling, you should see only things regarding to modeling, and if you're animating, then you should work only with tools and that are for animating purposes and so on. So they made a very neat feature in Cinema 4D that is right here under this guy, and they are called layouts. So for example, if I change the layout, which is now standard layout, to modeling layout, watch what happens. Instantly we get some changes. We still have our object manager here, our attribute manager here, our coordinates manager is here a little bit to the right, and we have a whole new set of polygon modeling tools. Well, if for some reason this layout doesn't suit you, you have to know that Cinema 4D offers an unbelievable amount of customization for those layouts. So you can basically add icons and dock these managers any way you want. So we will see this in later lessons, but for now it's better to stick with this factory preset layouts. Okay? Okay, now we can proceed to our extrude tool, which is this guy here. It's the most commonly used tool in polygon modeling. So if we click on this icon or select the shortcut key on our keyboard, which is D, we will see in Attribute Manager all settings regarding to that extrude tool. So let's actually extrude this polygon by left clicking and dragging. And you can see we extruded this polygon. And under these settings, you can see that this polygon here traveled this distance from its original position and created a new geometry. What is really neat about Cinema 4D is non-destructive workflow. So even if you extrude it and you think it should be a little bit back or forward, you can now change even after extrusion these settings. For example here, numerically. So you get the picture. It really simplifies the process. It helps you to have a non-destructive workflow. Okay? Now, always when you are using one of polygon modeling tools, the best practice or to get into a habit is to change to a move tool or any other non-destructive tool, because you can make accidental changes while trying to move something or orbit, so get in habit of doing that. When you use a tool, go back to the move tool, which will be your default non-problematic tool. Okay, so we are just briefly flying over the tools. Well, the extrude tool is, as I said, most commonly used tool in polygon modeling. Next to him is a derivation of that tool that is called extrude inner, and it does just that. Let me just expand this a bit. So you can also see now, next to your mouse cursor, you will always see a small icon that represents the current tool that you have selected. It's really helpful. So let's actually see what this tool does. If I left click my mouse button and drag, you can see that this polygon extruded towards the center and created these new polygons. Okay, also you can also see some settings here, and experiment with those settings. Try to get a feel of those tools, try to get familiar with them, and try to really understand the way they operate. I know it maybe sounds boring, but create simple objects and just utilize all those tools and really try to understand what each tool means. Okay, a very neat feature of Cinema4D is for example, if you're hovering your mouse over any feature, for example this extrude inner icon, and you wonder, would it be nice if I could open a help system directly showing the properties and settings and what can be changed and what can be actually be done with that tool? Well, that's your lucky day, because you can press Ctrl plus F1 key on your keyboard and the help system will open exactly explaining that tool or setting or anything you hover over, almost anything you hover over in Cinema4D. So that's a really neat feature. It's a really great help. Okay. One tool that is also commonly used in polygon modeling is this tool here, and it's called a bevel tool. And its main purpose is to create, let's say, rounding on edges. That's not technically correct, but it will give you a good idea of the tool. So let's for that purpose go into our edge mode here, or you can cycle these component modes with enter key. Okay, and you can see that my extrude inner tool is still active, and this is why I'm telling you that you can make accidental mistakes. So always get into the habit going back to move tool, and if you for some reason want to go back to your current tool, you can press space on your keyboard and it will go to your previous tool. Okay, but never mind that. Let's talk about bevel tool. So let's say I want to bevel this edge. I will select it, and again I will select this bevel tool and just left mouse drag and see something is happening. It's basically splitting the edge. So you can split those edges with much more subdivisions. For example, let's say 2, and you can see additional edges forming. Don't mind this choppy geometry, then we will talk about this a bit later. Just get yourself to know this tool. So currently this interpolation, the way that Cinema4D creates this additional geometry is dictated by this type of, which is now set to linear. So we can set this, for example, to anywhere, anything we want. For example, let's say Bezier. Now, since Bezier is a curve, it will produce a nice rounded effect. Okay, we can undo that all. Okay, we're just briefly looking over the tools, over the features you will use extensively in your polygon modeling process. The next tool I want you to meet is a slide tool. So let me deselect this by pressing in the empty space or what is much better is pressing Ctrl, Shift and A together on your keyboard. That means select none. Really helpful, really helpful. I hope some of you remember that I told you to get a pen and paper and to write those small tips down. Okay, so the slide tool is this guy right here. Well, to demonstrate why the slide tool is needed, for example, I could go to point mode and select, let's say, this point. And let's say that I manipulated this point somehow while I was modeling, and this point, or maybe also this point. So now I have a bit of clumsiness here. So now when you select this point, you can see that this axis, this line where you want to pull your point, is directed. Let me just orbit a bit so you can see that it's not in the same direction as this edge. Okay, even if you right click this axis, you can see many objects, many ways that this axis will behave or change. For example, in normal mode it will change the orientation, but whatever you selected, sometimes you just can't get it to be in the line with this edge or this edge or any edge that you prefer. This is where slide tool comes in handy. So we'll select our slide tool, and while you click and hold your left mouse, you can see a preview of this point. It basically slides the point all over where you want it, directly on the edges. Okay, so for example, if I release my mouse here, the point will be slided along the edges. Let me undo that. This is really helpful. Very nice feature of this slide tool is if you're sliding a point and then you press the Ctrl key and release, it will weld this point you have been sliding to the nearest point. Okay, that's very useful, you will see. And that brings me to next most commonly used tool, which is the weld tool. Again, you can see just next to my mouse that slide tool is still active. So let's go to our move tool, just to don't make any accidental mistakes. Okay, so keyboard shortcut E is the move tool. Okay, and it remembers the last thing you selected. Cinema 4D is a very smart application. So the next tool I want to talk about is the weld tool. Okay, as you can see, you can weld one point at a time with a Control key pressed where you are using a slide tool. Well, actually, when you are using many tools, there is an additional functionality. If you press Control key or Shift key, just experiment with it, so you will see the results with any tool. Okay, well, the weld tool is designed a bit differently. So for example, let's say I want to connect all these points together. Okay, so if I press my weld tool, you actually can't see that right now, but I can weld them in any position I want. This would mean I will weld them in the center. I can weld them in any of those points. For example, let's say I want to weld them here. So all of these points collapse to that single point. Don't worry about the geometry and the crazy look. It's not really important. It's just to show off the tools. Okay, let me undo that. So to demonstrate it more clearly, I will select just these 2 points with my move tool. Now, if I go to my weld tool, you will see it more clearly. I can weld them on the middle. You can see a preview on the far left point or the far right point. For example, here, and you see all that point collapse to its most right point. Okay, a companion to this tool, let me go to move tool is a stitch and sew tool. And let's say for this purpose we can go to our edge mode and just simply select one edge. Let's say this one, and we can stitch it with this upper edge. So get the point. Really I encourage you to experiment with all those tools, really to understand what they do. It will be so beneficial in later stages, because skipping this fundamental point, this fundamental knowledge and understanding of how tools operate will greatly, trust me, reduce your ability to model fast, to model precise, to model efficiently, and to do correct polygon modeling. Okay, just trust me on that. The next tool I want you to meet, let me go to our move tool, just because I'm making a habit. We orbit this a bit. Okay, well, maybe I will create a new simple object for this purpose. So let me delete this cube. Let me create, for example, a new sphere. Doesn't have to be so much detail, let's say about 20. And you can see how parametric objects are helping you to get basic shapes. For example, this under standard, under type you can see it's set to standard, and let's say for any reason you want I don't know, hemisphere. Well, modeling that would be quite complicated, and we should select the sphere, convert it to a polygon object, go to component mode, and then delete the other half, and this greatly simplifies the process. Okay, so let me convert that to polygon mode by pressing C. And the next and really important tool is this tool right here, and it's called the knife tool. You can access it also by pressing the K key, which sounds really funny in my head. Okay, so press the letter K on your keyboard. Okay, and now you are in knife tool mode. Knife tool is a really special tool with lots of options here, and it was specifically designed for adding geometry and for creating nice flows of geometry and creating precise topology and many more features. But let me show just briefly what it does. For example, you can see that even we are in edge mode, when I hover over components, it will change from edges to points, simply because it wants to help us well in modeling process. So if I, for any reason, let's say click here, and you will see a line extending from this line tool, and it's designed to snap to points, because this is almost always what you want, just to simplify things. Okay, let's do a cut. Let's click once again the left mouse, and we created a whole new edge. So that's the basic feature. Let's say that you want to cut all these edges in circular manner, because if you rotate this sphere a bit, you will see that you will maybe need a more defined geometry here, one more loop of edges to create more smooth transition from here to here. Okay, for doing that you can go here in a loop mode, and you'll see instantly, let me zoom just a bit, you'll see instantly you get a preview line. And if you for any reason need precise positioning, you can utilize this offset feature here. So this is a smart tool. It will try to predict what you want to cut. Just experiment a bit to get a feel for it. So let's cut this whole loop of edges. Okay, So we got a new geometry here. So if we undo that and check this select cuts option, once we do a cut, those edges will be selected, and you can, for example, utilize a scale tool, so you can avoid all that reselecting between a knife and other tools. Okay, let me undo that. Once again, press key. We're again in knife tool. This restrict to selection means that if you select any geometry, then the tool will cut only what is selected. So let's demonstrate that. Just select few edges, and if you press K now and do a cut, you will see it instantly cuts only objects that edges that were selected. You see, we made some pretty scary guys, ugly guys, and consider that must be corrected, and we will talk about this later. But here, for purpose of demonstrating the knife tool, it's not really important. Okay, so let me undo that. Again, Ctrl Shift plus A to deselect everything. What if you want, for example, a precise cut? Precise cut meaning you want it to be exactly the halfway between this and this row of edges. Well, for that purpose, again, we are getting that additional functionalities with Shift key and Control key. In this case, you can just anywhere, just click Shift key once and you will see your preview being sort of freezed. Now here in this offset option, you can manually drag these little arrows, or you can simply type in 50%. That's exactly the half, and left click mouse button to confirm. Okay. This is kind of a general workflow. Let me undo that and deselect all. Okay, and go to my move tool. There is an additional nice little tool that I use for this purpose, and I will most definitely have to speak about selection tools later, but for this purpose, let me just go to my live selection tool. You can see here under drop down menu, so there are many tools. Okay, let me just select for example a few edges here. Okay, so instead of going to knife tool, there is nice little feature here under structure menu that says connect, and it always creates a connection between those edges right in the middle. Okay, use that. The tools in Cinema 4D can be used and abused in other purposes, whatever does the job. So always try to think out of the box. And once again, at the end of this lesson about basic polygon modeling tools, I really encourage you to get familiar with those tools rather than actually trying to model something. So spend a few days by creating simple parametric objects, converting them, and really familiarize yourself with those basic polygon modeling tools. And in the next lesson we will cover a little bit more complex tools, but they are nothing in particularly complex. They're just a little bit more advanced. Okay, see you in the next lesson.